Hi beautiful year twos, welcome to our SEL lesson for Monday today. We are looking and continuing our work on catastrophes. So we did a little bit of work on what might be a catastrophe and what might be a small problem, and today we're going to expand on that a little bit. So we're looking at the question, is it a catastrophe? So I've got some words here that might describe a catastrophe, a crisis, a huge problem, a disaster. A catastrophe might be damaging. It might be damaging to you, and it might be damaging to a lot of people in a lot of different ways. And we can also describe a catastrophe as a tragedy, so something that's really sad and upsetting for yourself or for a lot of people. So I've drawn a catastrophe scale here, and as you can see, it starts from the bottom with no problem, works its way up to small, bad, extra bad problem before it reaches what we can call a catastrophe, so something that's a disaster. We're going to look at the bottom first, no problem. Think of something that is no problem in your life. No problem. You're having a fantastic day of online learning and you've done everything correctly and you've listened to your mum and your dad all day. No problem. You get what you like for dinner, no problem whatsoever there. So no problem is something where you are happy and content. When we move up, we start to get to a small problem. Have a think about what you might consider a small problem. You might think back to the work that we did last week, or you might think of your own small problem. Have a think. All right, Miss Pace has two for you. The first one is that it is a small problem if you forget your lunch, if you forget to bring your lunch to school. Yeah, you might be upset about it for 5 minutes, but then we come up with a solution for that problem and we find you some lunch. So that would be a small problem. It's not a tragedy. You're not going to have any serious health issues from not eating lunch for one day. Another example of a small problem might be that you lose in a board game or your favorite sport. So you might lose a soccer game or you might lose in a game of snakes and ladders. Once again, a small problem that you might be upset about for a few minutes, but it's definitely a problem that you can solve yourself. And it's a problem that you can move on from very quickly. So that's what we classify as a small problem, something that you can easily move on from. All right, let's move up a little bit. Now we're looking at a bad problem. So the problems are getting worse now. They're still not a crisis or a disaster, but they're getting bad. Have a think about what you might think is a bad problem. Maybe a bad problem might be that you're struggling with your online learning today. That would definitely be considered a bad problem. You're having trouble with your schoolwork. What can you do to fix it? You can ask your parents to help you. You can even email your teachers, because we're all here to help you. So that's definitely a way that you can go about fixing that bad problem. Let's move up again. Now we're at an extra bad problem. So the problems are getting worse now. They're not exactly a catastrophe yet. They could still be a tragedy, but they're not exactly on the same level as a catastrophe. So have a think about what might be an extra bad problem. Can you think of anything that's happened to you recently? So an extra bad problem is still a huge problem. Yeah, it's still something really, really big, but it's just not as big as a catastrophe. So an example might be that someone has a life-threatening emergency at school. Yeah, so we know at school that there's people with allergies and there's people who have life-threatening allergies at school. So it is a huge and extra bad problem if somebody has a reaction whilst they're at school and whilst they're at home. But we also know that if we were at school, the first thing we would do would be to tell a teacher so that the teacher or your parents could take the necessary actions to make sure that that person is taken care of. Yeah, so our huge problem can be helped if we take proper action. All right, and then we move up to our catastrophe. So our catastrophe is something that affects people in a huge way. So even bigger than our huge extra bad problems. Have a think about what you might think a catastrophe is. You're living through one at the moment, year twos. Have a think. The coronavirus, yeah? It's a catastrophe. It's damaging to a lot of families and a lot of people. A lot of people have lost their jobs, yeah? A lot of families are losing money that they would have made. And it's a tragedy. There's lots of people dying all around the world. We're so lucky here in Australia that we haven't been hit as bad by the coronavirus, but other countries haven't been as lucky as us. So we're very lucky where we are here. So it's definitely a tragedy, the coronavirus. So it makes it into our catastrophe. Have a think about another catastrophe. If someone passes away that you care about, that's definitely a tragedy, and that's a catastrophe. Yeah? Our catastrophes are the biggest of the biggest problems that we encounter and face in our lives. So maybe a natural disaster that might affect heaps and heaps of people. Yeah, so we're thinking of problems that are the worst things that can possibly happen. And that is what we make of our catastrophes. All right, year twos, thank you so much for listening. Have a lovely rest of your day.